In the harsh Montana frontier of 1855, a desperate mother and her 5 starving children wear for sale signs as their last hope for survival. When widowed rancher Daniel Holt pays their debt, claiming he needs workers but offering them dignity instead of ownership, everyone wonders, can a family built from necessity ever become one forged by love? The first snow fell early that year in Whitetail County, Montana Territory. Emma Sullivan watched it through cracked window glass, knowing each white flake brought her family closer to starvation. Behind her, 5 children slept, huddled together on a single mattress. Mary, Catherine, the twins, Elizabeth and Robert, and little Thomas. Their breaths made tiny clouds in the frigid air of what had once been their general store, now stripped bare by debt and death. "We need to eat," Mary whispered, awake and watching her mother with eyes too old for her 12 years. "The little ones are getting sick." Emma touched the gold band still on her finger, the last thing of value they owned. 6 months since influenza took Charles, leaving behind a failing business and 5 hungry mouths. 6 months of neighbors crossing the street to avoid the widow's desperate eyes. The knock at the door made both women jump. Outside stood Mr. Jensen from the bank, his face pinched with distaste. "Your time's up, Mrs. Sullivan," he announced without greeting. "Store's been sold. New owners want you out by sunset." "But where will we go?" Emma asked, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her throat. "It's nearly winter." Jensen's smile never reached his eyes. "That's not the bank's concern. However," he paused, glancing at the children, "I might have a solution that benefits everyone." He pulled something from his coat, 6 cardboard squares and twine. "Folks around here need workers," he explained, handing them to Emma. "Strong backs don't come cheap. But a widow with 5 children? That's what we call dead weight in business terms." Emma stared at the crude signs, each bearing the same 2 words, "For sale." "You can't be serious," she whispered. "Perfectly serious. Wear these in the town square tomorrow. Someone might take you all, though it's more likely they'll just want the older ones." He tipped his hat. "Better than freezing, wouldn't you say?" After he left, Emma sank to the floor, the signs clutched in trembling hands. Mary knelt beside her. "What will we do, Mama?" Emma looked at her sleeping children, then at the snow coming down harder now. "We'll do what we must," she said, threading twine through the first sign. "We'll survive." By noon the next day, the Sullivan family sat on a wooden platform in the town square. Emma held 4-year-old Thomas on her lap, while the other children lined up beside her, each wearing a sign around their neck. People gathered to stare, some with pity, others with calculating eyes. "Starting bid for the lot is $200, Jensen called out. "Or make an offer on individuals. Boys small but growing, girls no cooking and sewing. I'll give 50 for the oldest girl," called a man whose leering gaze made Emma's skin crawl. "Need someone to keep house." 75 for the twins, countered another. "Good age for training up right." Emma held Thomas tighter as her other children pressed closer to her, faces pale with fear. Catherine began to cry silently, while Robert's small hands balled into fists. "Is this legal?" a woman in the crowd asked. "Perfectly legal," Jensen replied. "I'm selling their labor contracts, not the people themselves." But Emma knew better. The labor contracts were just pretty words for something uglier, the breaking apart of her family, scattering her children to separate homesteads where she might never see them again. A horse whinnied at the edge of the crowd. People parted as a rider approached a tall man with a slight limp and eyes the color of thunderclouds. His clothes were worn but clean, his face weathered by sun and wind. He studied the Sullivan family for a long moment before dismounting. "How much for all of them?" he asked, his voice quiet but carrying across the sudden silence. Jensen's eyebrows shot up. "The whole lot? That would be $200, Mr. Holt." The man Holt didn't look away from Emma's eyes. $150. That covers their debt to the bank, doesn't it?" "Well, yes. But then $150 it is." Holt pulled out a leather pouch, Unless Mrs. Sullivan objects? The question directed at her, not Jensen, hung in the air between them. Emma saw something unexpected in this stranger's face. Respect. "What exactly are you buying, Mr. Holt?" she asked, her voice stronger than she felt. "Labor, room and board," he answered simply. "Not ownership. Never that." Emma looked at her children's frightened faces, then back at the man who offered an alternative to separation. "What guarantee do I have that you won't sell us off separately once we're beyond town limits?" Holt's mouth twitched slightly. "You have my word as a man who also knows what it means to lose everything." Was the word of a stranger enough to gamble her children's future? As Emma hesitated, little Thomas tugged at her sleeve. "Mama," he whispered, pointing at Holt. "He has kind eyes like Papa." Daniel Holt's wagon creaked under the weight of the Sullivan family's few possessions. A trunk of clothes, Charles' old hunting rifle, a family Bible, and a sack of cornmeal. Emma sat beside him on the driver's bench, back straight and eyes fixed on the road ahead. The older children rode in the wagon bed, while Thomas slept in Mary's arms, exhausted from crying. "Your husband," Daniel said, after they'd traveled for nearly an hour in silence. "Jensen mentioned influenza? Charles caught it helping the Dawsons when their youngest fell ill," Emma replied. "The doctor said he'd never seen fever take someone so quickly." Daniel nodded. "My Alice was the same. 3 years ago now." The shared grief hung between them, a strange comfort in its familiarity. "Your ranch," Emma ventured. "Is it large?" "Was once. Drought took most of the cattle. 400 acres, most of it useless now without water." His hands tightened on the reins. "The main house. A cabin for you and the children. Barn, corral. Nothing fancy. And what exactly do you expect from us?" The question had burned in Emma's mind since they'd left town. Daniel kept his eyes on the trail. "Work, Mrs. Sullivan. The honest kind. Your older ones can help with chores, feeding livestock, gathering eggs, mending fences. You cook decent?" "I do." "Good. Haven't had a proper meal in months." He glanced sideways at her. "I'm not looking for a wife, if that's your worry. Just help running what's left of my ranch." Catherine's voice piped up from the wagon bed. "Do you have horses, Mr. Holt?" "3. Old mare for plowing, my gelding, and a half-broken Mustang nobody can ride." "I could try," Robert said eagerly. "Papa taught me." "Robert!" Emma scolded, but Daniel chuckled. "Maybe when you're bigger, boy. For now, you'll learn safer things." They crested a hill, and the ranch spread before them, a weathered 2-story house. A smaller cabin with a sagging porch. Outbuildings in various states of repair. Beyond stretched empty pastures dotted with scrubby trees, all framed by distant mountains. "It ain't much," Daniel said, almost apologetically. "It's shelter," Emma replied. "And safety for my children. That's enough." As they approached, Emma noticed the careful mending on the cabin's roof, the swept yard, the stacked firewood. A man preparing for winter, a man planning to stay. The children scrambled from the wagon, stretching stiff limbs. Thomas woke and stared wide-eyed at his new surroundings. "Cabin needs sweeping out," Daniel said, unloading their trunk. "Been empty since my last ranch hand left. There's a pump out back for water." Mary studied the cabin critically. "Windows need washing, and that step's loose." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You've got a foreman's eye, girl." "Mary knows everything," Elizabeth announced proudly. "She's the smartest." Emma watched her oldest daughter blush at the rare compliment. Perhaps here, away from the pitying glances of townspeople, her children might find more than just survival. Daniel showed them inside the cabin 2 small bedrooms, a main room with a stone fireplace, rough furniture built by capable hands. Not fancy, as he'd warned, but solid. "I'll bring supper over when it's ready," he said, heading for the door. "Rest tonight. Work starts at dawn." After he left, the children explored their new home, while Emma unpacked their meager belongings. "Can we trust him, Mama?" Mary asked quietly. "Do we have a choice?" Emma countered. Mary's mouth set in a stubborn line, reminiscent of her father. "We always have choices. Papa said so." Emma touched her daughter's cheek. "Then we choose to make the best of this. Together." That night, after a simple supper of beans and cornbread that Daniel had brought over, Emma tucked her children into the 2 narrow beds. Thomas refused to sleep until she promised 3 times that they wouldn't have to wear the for sale signs again. A noise at the window startled her, the silhouette of a man against the moonlight. Emma grabbed Charles' rifle before recognizing Daniel's outline. He backed away quickly, hands raised. "Just checking the shutters," he called softly. "Storm's coming." Emma lowered the rifle, heart pounding. "A simple knock would have been better, Mr. Holt." "Noted." He hesitated. "You handle that weapon like you know how to use it." "Charles taught me." "For protection." Daniel nodded slowly. "Good. Out here, everyone needs to be able to protect themselves." He glanced at the sleeping children. "All of you should learn. Even Thomas? Especially Thomas. World's not kind to those who can't stand their ground." He started to leave, then turned back. "Mrs. Sullivan?" "Yes?" "Those signs. Burn them tomorrow." Emma watched him walk away, a solitary figure against the vastness of the land. Behind her, the cabin felt suddenly warmer, as if the very walls had exhaled in relief. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside, for the first time in 6 months, Emma allowed herself to hope. The wagon wheels groaned under their weight, as Emma clutched Thomas tighter to her chest. Every bump in the dusty trail felt like a reminder of how quickly their lives had changed. Just hours ago, they'd been merchandise on display. Now they followed a limping stranger into the unknown. "Look, Mama," Catherine whispered, pointing to a hawk circling overhead. "Do you think it's watching us?" Emma swallowed hard. "Maybe it's showing us the way." The children's stomachs rumbled in unified protest. Their last meal had been yesterday morning, a crust of bread divided 6 ways. The twins, Elizabeth and Robert, leaned against each other, their eyelids heavy with exhaustion. Mary kept her spine straight, eyes locked on Daniel Holt's back as he rode ahead on horseback. "Can we trust him?" Mary murmured, too quietly for the others to hear. Emma had no answer that wouldn't sound like a lie. The trail narrowed as they entered a valley cut between 2 hills. Pines stood sentinel along the ridges, their shadows stretching long in the late afternoon Sunday. Daniel slowed his horse and waited for their wagon to catch up. "Creek's just ahead," he said, nodding toward a line of cottonwoods. "Animals need water. So do you folks, I expect." The cool shade of the trees offered blessed relief from the Sunday. While Daniel tended the horses, Emma helped the children down from the wagon. Their legs wobbled like newborn colts after hours of sitting. "Drink," Emma urged, leading them to the burbling stream. But slowly, Daniel kept his distance, pretending to adjust his saddle while watching them from the corner of his eye. When Thomas splashed water on his sisters, triggering reluctant giggles, something shifted in Daniel's weathered face. "Your husband," he said abruptly when Emma approached for the water jug. "How long's he been gone?" 8 months, Emma replied, the wound still fresh. "Fever took him in a week." Daniel nodded. "Alice, my wife, lasted 3 days once it settled in her lungs." He cleared his throat. "You got skills? Besides raising children?" "I kept our books at the store. I can cook, sew, garden. Mary's good with animals. Catherine can." "I'm not buying your services," Daniel interrupted, then softened at Emma's flinch. "Just need to know where you'll fit at the ranch." The children gathered wild berries while the adults talked, their fingers and lips stained purple. For just a moment, they looked like normal children on a summer outing, not refugees from debt and desperation. Back on the trail, the landscape opened up. Fields stretched to distant mountains, fields that should have been golden with wheat or green with corn, but instead lay parched and abandoned. "Drought's been hard," Daniel explained, noticing their stares. 3 bad years. Most folks left." "Then why do you stay?" Emma asked. Daniel's shoulders stiffened beneath his worn coat. "Alice is buried under the big oak," behind the house. Can't leave her alone. As the sun began its descent, they crested a hill. Below them spread Daniel's ranch, the Broken Horn he called it. The main house stood weathered but solid. Nearby, a smaller cabin listed slightly, its porch missing several boards. A barn, with faded red paint, dominated the yard. Beyond, pastures stretched to a line of trees, marking a stream's path. "It ain't much," Daniel said, watching their faces. "But nobody will come asking for money or trying to separate you here." Thomas pressed closer to Emma. "Is this our home now, Mama?" 6 pairs of eyes turned to Daniel, who shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "For now," he said carefully, "till something better comes along." As they approached the buildings, Emma noticed details that spoke of neglect: broken windows patched with canvas, missing shingles, an overgrown garden plot choked with weeds. This wasn't just a man who needed help. This was a man drowning in grief. A dog bounded from behind the barn, barking frantically. The children shrank back, but Daniel whistled sharply. "Scout, enough!" The dog skidded to a halt, tail wagging cautiously as it sniffed the newcomers. "He won't hurt you," Daniel assured them. "Just surprised to see new faces." Emma understood the feeling. The cabin door creaked open to reveal cobwebs and dust, thick enough to write names in. Emma stood frozen on the threshold, while the children peered around her skirts. The musty smell of long emptiness filled their nostrils. "Been vacant since my last ranch hands left," Daniel explained, setting down their few belongings. "Year ago last spring, 1 room with a stone fireplace, 2 narrow beds with bare mattresses, a table missing a leg, propped up by stacked crates, a washstand with a cracked basin. This was to be their home." Mary squeezed past, determination in every line of her 12-year-old body. She marched to the window and yanked open the shutters, sending a cascade of dust motes dancing in the sudden beam of evening light. "We can clean it," she announced, as if daring anyone to disagree. Daniel shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the domestic scene. "There's linens in the chest. Water from the pump out back needs boiling. I'll bring some food over once you're settled." After he left, the twins collapsed onto one of the beds, raising another cloud of dust that sent Thomas into a fit of coughing. Catherine found a broom in the corner and began sweeping with grim purpose. "Mama," she said quietly, "why did he really take us?" Emma had been wondering the same thing. Men didn't spend good money on strangers without expecting something in return. "He needs help with his ranch," she answered, the safest truth she could offer. By nightfall, they'd made progress. The worst of the dust was gone. The beds had sheets, though they smelled of cedar and thyme. The fire pushed back the chill that settled quickly once the sun disappeared. Daniel's knock startled them all. He entered carrying a basket and an awkward expression. "Not much," he said, setting down his offering. "Biscuits, jerky, some apples from the cellar. More tomorrow when I butcher a chicken." Emma saw her children's eyes fix on the food, saw them fight to maintain dignity despite their hunger. "Thank you," she said. "We should discuss terms." Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Terms? What you expect from us? How long we stay? What happens if it doesn't work out?" The children busied themselves with the food, but Emma knew they were listening to every word. "Fair enough." Daniel pulled out the wobbly chair, tested it, then sat gingerly. "Ranch needs looking after. House too. Been managing alone? But barely. You and the older ones were cooking, cleaning, helping with livestock, garden if you can revive it. In exchange, you get shelter, food, protection, and payment?" Emma pressed. Daniel's mouth tightened. "Can't offer much there. Ranch hasn't turned profit since the drought. But I'll set aside what I can. Build it up for when you decide to move on." Mary looked up sharply. "You already think we'll leave?" "Everyone does eventually," Daniel replied, something haunted flickering across his face. Thomas had been silently watching the adults, apple juice running down his chin. Now he climbed into Emma's lap, a warm weight against her chest. "Do we have to wear the signs anymore?" he asked. his voice small. Daniel's face darkened. Those are kindling now. Nobody's wearing signs on my land. Emma felt a knot in her chest loosen slightly. And we stay together? All of us? That was the deal, Daniel confirmed. Though the girls might want to move to the main house eventually. More space there. The suggestion hung in the air, its implications clear. Emma met his gaze steadily. We'll stay together for now, Mr. Holt. Daniel, he corrected. Mr. Holt was my father. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose shutters. The night pressed against the windows, vast and unknown. One more thing, Daniel said, rising to leave. Ranch is 5 miles from town. Nearest neighbor's 3 miles west. If trouble comes. He hesitated. If I'm not around, there's a shotgun under the porch boards, 3rd plank from the steps. The door closed behind him, leaving Emma and her children to exchange worried glances. Why would we need a gun, Mama? Elizabeth whispered. Just in case, Emma soothed, though her mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. Later, after the children had fallen asleep, the twins and Thomas in one bed, the girls in the other, Emma stepped outside. The night was alive with unfamiliar sounds. Coyotes in the distance, the low of cattle, the rustle of wind through tall grass. Light glowed in the window of the main house. A shadow moved across it. Daniel, still awake, perhaps wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. Are we prisoners or family? Emma whispered to the stars. And which would be worse? Morning light spilled across the ranch as Emma watched her children transform before her eyes. Just 3 months ago, they wore for sale signs. Now they moved with purpose, their shoulders straighter, cheeks fuller. Robert and Elizabeth, the twins, trailed Daniel like eager puppies, fighting over who would hold the nails as he repaired the chicken coop. Catherine had coaxed carrots and potatoes from soil everyone else called dead. Mary's nimble fingers turned flour and water into bread that filled the kitchen with the scent of home. And little Thomas? He collected pretty rocks for Daniel, who never failed to act amazed at each one. Look at this, Daniel exclaimed, examining the ordinary gray stone Thomas had just presented. Might be silver in that one. Thomas beamed. Can I be a miner when I grow up? You can be anything, Daniel replied, ruffling the boy's hair. But miners work mighty hard. I'm not scared of hard work, Thomas declared proudly. Emma's heart squeezed as she hung laundry nearby. The words, so innocent, yet echoing with the shadow of their past. Not long ago, these children were viewed as burdens. Now they worked not because they were property, but because they belonged. That evening, while the children slept in their cabin, Emma found Daniel on the porch, whittling a small wooden horse. For Thomas, he explained, boys never had a proper toy. You've given them so much already, Emma said, wrapping her shawl tighter against the October chill. Daniel's hands stilled. They've given me more. Place was dead after Alice passed. Now there's life again. Our arrangement, Emma began carefully. Winter's coming. You said we'd talk again when... You've more than earned your keep, he cut in. All of you. But it's still your ranch, Emma pressed. And we're still your... Don't. Daniel's voice turned sharp. You're not my property. Never were. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken truths. The next morning brought frost, silvering the grass like diamond dust. Emma was hanging bedsheets when she spotted them 3 riders on the horizon, moving with purpose toward the ranch. Something in their approach sent warning prickles down her spine. Daniel emerged from the barn, saw the riders, and his face hardened. Take the children inside, he ordered, striding toward her. Lock the door. Who are they? Emma gathered the wet sheets quickly. Cooper brothers. Been eyeing this land since Alice died. They'll try to provoke me. His hand hovered near the gun on his hip. No matter what you hear, stay inside. Emma hurried to the cabin, gathering her confused children. Through the window, they watched as the men dismounted. The tallest removed his hat, revealing hair the color of rust, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Holt, he called. Heard you got yourself a ready-made family. Smart business, buy cheap labor when it's wearing for sale signs. Daniel stood perfectly still. My land isn't for sale, Cooper. Everything's for sale at the right price. Cooper's gaze drifted to the cabin, where Emma and the children huddled by the window. Shame if something happened to those little workers of yours. Mary's hand found Emma's, squeezing tight. Mama, she whispered. They're talking about us like we're things again. Daniel's voice carried clearly. Leave. Now. Cooper laughed. A sound like breaking glass. Think about our offer, Holt. Won't be so generous next time. After they rode away, Emma found Daniel staring at the distant mountains, shoulders tight as drawn wire. They'll be back, he said, not turning around. Who are they really? Emma asked. Men who think everything and everyone has a price. Daniel finally looked at her, something fierce in his eyes. They're wrong. That night, Emma lay awake, listening to the wind. For the first time since arriving at Broken Horn Ranch, she felt the weight of fear pressing down again. Not just for herself or her children, but for Daniel too. The first snowflakes danced innocently from a steel-gray sky. By nightfall, they had become an army, marching sideways on howling winds. The blizzard trapped them all in the main house, where they'd moved for safety. The cabin's roof had begun to leak, and Daniel insisted they stay together, just until the storm passes. Now on the third day, Emma watched him pace before the fire, like a caged wolf. The twins played checkers in the corner, using buttons for pieces. Catherine braided Mary's hair, while Thomas napped, thumb in mouth. The north pasture fences won't hold, Daniel muttered, stopping to peer through frosted windows at white nothingness. If the cattle break through the snowdrifts, they'll scatter and freeze to death. You can't go out in this, Emma argued. The temperature would kill you before you reach the pasture. Daniel grabbed his coat from its hook. Those cattle are all we have left. Without them, we won't make it to spring. Before Emma could protest further, the door flew open with a bang. Mary stood there, her face white as the snow behind her. The twins! She gasped. I can't find them anywhere. Catherine jumped up. They said something about helping with the cattle. I thought they were joking. The blood drained from Daniel's face. Without a word, he strapped on his gun belt and grabbed a rope from its peg. I'm coming with you, Emma said, already reaching for her heaviest shawl. No, stay with the others. Daniel's voice left no room for argument. They're my children. Their eyes locked across the room. Something shifted in Daniel's gaze, recognition, perhaps respect. 10 minutes, he said finally. Then we both go. Emma kissed Mary's forehead. Watch Thomas and Catherine, bar the door behind us. The storm was a living thing, clawing at their clothes and skin as they struggled toward the north pasture. The world had vanished, replaced by swirling white. Emma could barely see Daniel 3 feet ahead of her, a dark shape connected by a rope tied around both their waists. Halfway there, they found tiny footprints already filling with fresh snow. Elizabeth! Robert! Emma's voice disappeared into the roaring wind. A faint cry answered so soft Emma thought she imagined it. They followed the sound to find the twins huddled beneath an overturned wagon, shivering violently, their lips blue. The cattle? Robert managed through chattering teeth. We heard them bellowing. We were trying to help. Foolish, both of you, Daniel growled, but his hands were gentle as he wrapped them in his heavy coat. Emma, take them back to the house. I'll check the fence line. You'll freeze to death, she protested. Better me than all of us. He wouldn't meet her eyes. In that moment, Emma understood he still considered himself expendable, just as the debt collector had labeled her family dead weight. This man who'd saved them still couldn't see his own worth. We didn't come this far to lose you now, she said fiercely. We go together or not at all. Surprise flickered across his frost-nipped face. For a heartbeat, Emma thought he would argue. Instead, he nodded once. They found the cattle huddled against the broken fence, using their bodies to block the wind. Working together, Emma and Daniel herded them toward a stand of pine trees that offered shelter while the twins waited under the wagon. When they returned, Elizabeth had stopped shivering, a dangerous sign. Daniel lifted her while Emma carried Robert. The trek back stretched endlessly, each step a battle against wind, determined to knock them down. Just when Emma thought her strength would fail, the house appeared through the white curtain like a miracle. Mary threw open the door, her face crumpling with relief. That night, after the children slept in a pile of blankets before the fire, Daniel sat beside Emma at the table, both their hands wrapped around steaming cups. "You risked your life today," he said quietly. "For the twins, and for me. You would have done the same. That's different." "How?" Emma challenged. Daniel stared into his cup. "I've got nothing left to lose." Emma's hand found his across the rough wood. "That's where you're wrong, Daniel Holt. You have us now. All of us." His fingers tightened around hers, and in the firelight, she saw a tear track silently down his weathered cheek. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, something fragile and precious began to grow in the space between property and family, between strangers and something more. Spring painted the hills green after a bitter winter. Whispers followed Emma and the children as they entered town for the first time since coming to Broken Horn Ranch. Heads turned, fingers pointed. Daniel walked tall beside them. Thomas perched on his shoulders like a tiny lookout. "That's them, the Bott family," someone hissed loud enough for Mary to hear. Her chin trembled, but she kept her head high. The general store smelled of coffee beans and leather. As Emma counted out precious coins for flour, the storekeeper's wife leaned across the counter. "Must be strange," she said with false sweetness, "living with a man who owns you." Before Emma could answer, Catherine piped up. "Nobody owns us, ma'am. We help each other." A heavy boot stomped on the porch outside. The door swung open, revealing Rufus Cooper and his brothers. Their shadows stretched across the floor like dark fingers reaching for the family. "Well now," Cooper drawled, thumbs hooked in his belt. "The ghost rancher brings his purchased help to town." His eyes traveled over Emma in a way that made Daniel step between them. "We're just buying supplies," Daniel said quietly. His hand never strayed toward his gun, but everyone could feel its presence. Cooper smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Heard you're nearly broke, Holt. That winter was rough on everyone." He leaned closer. "Our offer for your land still stands. We'll even throw in something for your BAVE investments." His gaze flicked toward the children. The twins moved closer to Emma. Robert's hands balled into fists while Elizabeth grabbed her mother's skirt. "Those people," Daniel said, voice steady as a rock, "are worth more than gold. They're not property. They're my family now." Cooper's laugh cut like a knife. "Family? You paid cash money for them right on Main Street. Who are you fooling?" "I paid a debt," Daniel corrected. His shoulders straightened as he spoke louder, making sure everyone in the store could hear. "Just like my father taught me, you help folks who need it. The Sullivans rebuilt what was broken in my home and my heart. That makes them family in every way that matters." Cooper's face darkened. His hand drifted toward his holster. "Pretty words don't change facts. You're living with damaged goods, Holt." In one smooth motion, Daniel pushed Thomas into Emma's arms. His hand moved faster than anyone could follow, drawing his revolver before Cooper's fingers even touched his gun. "I've buried enough people I love," Daniel said, voice barely above a whisper, but filling the silent store. "Don't make me bury you too." The clock on the wall ticked 5 long seconds before Cooper backed away, hands raised slightly. "You're both fools," he spat. "Playing house with no future." As the Cooper brothers retreated, Mary stepped forward and slipped her small hand into Daniel's empty one. Her voice carried through the store. "Mr. Holt taught us that people aren't things to be bought and sold. They're hearts to be treasured." Outside in the wagon, Emma watched Daniel load their supplies. His hands shook slightly as he tied down the flour sack. "You didn't have to defend us like that," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. Maybe for the first time since that summer day when he'd counted out bills to the debt collector. "Yes," he said simply. "I did." And in that moment, Something shifted between them. Something neither had dared name during the long winter months when survival had been their only goal. Golden light spilled across the valley as Emma hung laundry on the line. 1856 had brought new life to Broken Horn Ranch. The garden burst with vegetables. Cattle grazed in distant fields, and laughter echoed from the barn where Daniel taught the twins to saddle horses. A dust cloud rose on the horizon. Emma shaded her eyes, heart quickening. Riders coming meant news or trouble. "Mary," she called. "Fetch Mr. Holt from the north field." The rider was the county clerk, Mr. Patterson, clutching an official-looking envelope. "Mrs. Sullivan," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Is Daniel about?" Daniel appeared minutes later, wiping sweat from his brow. The children gathered on the porch steps, watching with curious eyes as Patterson handed over the envelope. "What's this?" Daniel asked. "Deed to the ranch," Patterson explained. "All filed proper with the changes you requested." Daniel broke the seal and scanned the document, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he looked up at Emma with eyes that held a question. "I've had it changed," he explained. "Put in all our names, yours, mine, the children's, equal shares." Thomas tugged at his mother's skirt. "What does that mean, Mama?" Emma couldn't answer, her throat too tight with emotion. Daniel knelt before the boy. "It means this land belongs to all of us. No one person owns it. We share it, just like we share the work and the rewards." "Like a real family?" Catherine asked. Daniel glanced up at Emma before answering. "That's for your mother to say." Later, after the children were tucked in bed, Emma found Daniel on the porch, whittling a small wooden horse. Stars filled the vast Montana sky like scattered diamonds. "Why did you do it?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Change the deed?" His knife paused. "When Alice died, I thought I'd never have a family again. Then Jensen was selling you and the children like cattle, and something broke inside me." He set the carving down. "I told myself I needed workers, that it was just business, but it was never that." "What was it then?" Emma's voice barely carried on the night breeze. Daniel's calloused fingers found hers in the darkness. "A second chance, for all of us." Emma watched his profile against the starlight. "The town still talks. They say I'm just property you purchased." "People will always talk," Daniel replied. "Question is, what do you believe?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. "I believe," Emma said carefully, "that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be." Daniel's hand tightened around hers. "When I saw you sitting on that porch with those horrible signs around your necks, I recognized something in your eyes that I felt in my heart, the fear of being thought worthless." A shooting star blazed across the heavens, brief and brilliant. "Daniel Holt," Emma said, turning to face him fully, "are you asking to court me proper?" His smile transformed his face from handsome to beautiful. "I reckon I am, if you'll have me." The next morning, the children watched wide-eyed as Daniel presented Emma with a simple silver ring, not fancy, but honestly given. Mary helped her sisters pick wildflowers for a celebratory dinner. Robert puffed out his chest as Daniel showed him how to carve a special wooden box for his mother's new treasure. As twilight painted the mountains purple and gold, the family four, that's what they truly were, now gathered around the table Daniel had built during those first lonely months after Alice died. "To second chances," he toasted, raising a cup of sweet cider. "And to knowing your worth," Emma added, "isn't measured by what others will pay for you, but by the love you're brave enough to give."